The courthouse in Lewisburg was packed, every seat filled, neighbours pressed shoulder to shoulder. At the front sat the accused, a blacksmith named Erasmus Shue. Across from him, the victim's mother. She raised her hand, swore to tell the truth, and then she said the words that froze the room. He seized her head in both hands and snapped her neck. Gasps broke the silence. Did she witness it herself? No. So how did she know? Because the one who told her was her daughter. The daughter she had buried 2 weeks earlier. On the morning of January the 23rd, 1897, Erasmus Shue made several visits to his neighbour's house. Each time he appeared concerned for his wife. He even asked the neighbour's son if he would mind to go and check on Zona. Finally, the boy agreed, and what he found was burnt into memory. Zona, lying at the foot of the stairs, eyes open, staring, gone. Erasmus rushed home, collapsing into grief. He lifted her body to the bed, cradling her head, sobbing. And in those first few hours, no one questioned what came next. A husband's love made him cling tighter. He insisted on preparing her himself. He washed her, dressed her in a burgundy gown with a high collar, fastened a veil beneath her chin to keep her decent, to keep her safe, even in death. When Dr. George Knapp arrived, Erasmus hovered close, unwilling to let her go. The doctor made only a cursory check. The paper read, heart failure. Later, he quietly altered the record, changing it to childbirth, but there was no sign she was pregnant. At the funeral, Erasmus never left her side. He stood at the head of the coffin, as if shielding her from the weight of every stare. When her head drooped, he propped it with pillows. When mourners leaned in, he adjusted the veil, smoothed the collar, tugging it close. Gestures that seemed like a man fussing over his wife one last time. To most it looked like devotion, a grief too raw to let anyone near. And with the service finished, Zona was buried. But if he thought he could just move on, build a new life without his beautiful wife, he was wrong. Because just weeks later, silence gave way to something worse. Her mother said the dead began to speak. Mary Jane Heaster was hollowed out, her daughter was in the ground, and the case was closed. She told herself it was enough, easier to accept than anything darker. So she tried to settle into grief, nights spent on her knees whispering prayers, days heavy in silence, where the only sound was the creak of the house around her. She prayed for peace, and then the silence began to change. On the first night, she woke to a weight in the room. Not sound, not movement, just a sense. Thick, pressing, but impossible to ignore. And at the foot of her bed, a form, darker than the dark, still, watching. A mother's heart knew who the shapeless mass had to be. By the second night it spoke, a whisper, low, level, terrifying in its calm. My neck was squeezed off at the first joint, it said. Mary Jane's breath caught. The figure did not fade. It only stared, her neck bent at an impossible angle, until the room seemed colder than winter. On the third night, the voice sharpened. It spoke of Erasmus's temper, of words turned cruel, of a hand quick to strike, long before the night had ended. And then at supper, rage that no meat was on the table, how shouts became hands, fingers gripping her skull, a sudden, violent twist, and darkness. On the fourth night, the ghost gave proof. It spoke of a bloodstain in the house Mary Jane had never seen, a dark patch that had soaked into the floorboards, overlooked by everyone. This was no dream. Mary Jane swore she was wide awake. Her daughter had been murdered. And the dead would not let her rest until she carried the truth to the living. But a mother's word was not enough. If justice was to come, the earth itself would have to testify. Mary Jane walked for miles to the prosecutor's office in Greenbrier. She told him everything, the visits, the words, the bloodstain she had never seen. At first, her story was dismissed. Neighbours whispered that she had lost her mind, clinging to dreams instead of letting her daughter rest. The prosecutor, too, was dismissive. Ghosts didn't stand in court. But after repeated visits from the distraught mother, he agreed one thing: a re-examination of the scene of death, just to get some peace from her near-daily visits. And there, just as Mary Jane swore, they found it. A dark bloodstain sunk deep into the floorboards. A stain Erasmus himself had tried to scrub away. A stain the neighbours had overlooked. That was enough, too precise to ignore. The order was given. Zona's body would be exhumed. On February the 22nd, the grave was opened. Her coffin lifted from the frozen earth, carried to a one-room schoolhouse. Inside, 3 doctors prepared to examine the body. Erasmus was forced to stand and watch. Beneath the collar, the truth was waiting. Finger-shaped bruises encircled the throat. A windpipe crushed flat. The neck snapped exactly where the ghost said it was. The cause of death was rewritten. Not heart failure, not childbirth. Murder. They arrested Erasmus Shue. June 1897. The courthouse filled again. Neighbours testified. Erasmus's vigil at the coffin, his refusal to let anyone near, the veil drawn tight beneath the chin. Others described a bruise on Zona's face, the way her head sagged unnaturally. Then Mary Jane Heaster took the stand. She told the jury exactly what her daughter's ghost had revealed. The defense tried to dismiss it as grief, a dream, but she wouldn't back down. It was no dream, she said firmly. I was as awake as ever I was. And the ghost's words had already been confirmed by flesh and bone, just as her spirit said they would. Then came the revelations about Erasmus himself. He'd served time for theft. He'd been married twice before. His first wife divorced him, citing his cruelty. The second was dead. Her neck too was broken after what he'd called an accident, claiming he'd dropped a brick on her head. And now a third wife, Zona, lay in her grave, with her neck broken exactly as the ghost described. He had even boasted, neighbours recalled, that he meant to marry 7 women before he was done. The jury no longer needed a ghost to convict him, but in Greenbrier County, they believed the dead had testified. Verdict: guilty, life in prison. And even then, the crowd was not satisfied. They wanted more than the conviction. They wanted blood. As Erasmus awaited transport, a mob gathered. They pulled him from his cell and had a noose around his neck, mocking him and asking if he thought this was how Zona had felt as he squeezed the life from her. He was a snivelling, pathetic figure before the sheriff managed to step in. The sheriff threatened the mob with a trial of their own if they went any further. Only then did the crowd back away. Erasmus survived that night, but in prison he lasted only 3 years. Disease swept through the cells, measles, then pneumonia, and he died choking in the dark, shunned even there. Zona, by contrast, lies in a quiet hillside grave, but a marker tells the story. The only trial in American history where a ghost's testimony helped to convict a murderer. Not all spirits come back to seek justice. In rural Wales, one spirit's only intent was to destroy a family. Watch Britain's Most Exorcised House next. Click the end card and venture deeper. And if you're still here, you're an archivist now. Subscribe, because next time we're going to Edinburgh, where one mausoleum is feared for unleashing something violent. Countless visitors have left with scratches and bruises, some carried away by ambulance. I'm Nico, and I'll meet you in the next mystery.